So Steve, it is 5:30, and we have 6 of us here, so we have a
Yes.
quorum.
We certainly do, and I think there's someone that has joined us at home, but who is tuning in with us?
This is Megan Street from the Park Board.
Oh, hi, yes, hello there.
Hello.
Awesome, and you can hear and see just fine.
I can see the PowerPoint and I can hear you very clearly.
Awesome. Okay, well, we can get started,
Okay,
absolutely.
then we will call the meeting to order. First thing is to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Do I have a motion for that?
Need a motion.
Okay. And any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Move on to approving disbursements. Can I have a motion for that?
Motion.
Okay, got a motion. Is there a second? Second. Okay, any discussion, questions on that?
I would just say I heard from the Bare Bones Barbecue that they've been closed for a couple months and that they plan to reopen on I believe it's the week from Wednesday, it'd be the 12th of May. So that's a good sign too. Kind of preparing for it, but it's been a couple months that they've been closed, so.
That's good news. Any other discussion? Otherwise, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. We can move on to, we don't have anything in leases, so we can move on to projects, and we've got discussion on 3 items. Steve,
Yes.
do I turn that over to you?
Yes, so we'll go in order here, and I'll take the Nahant Marsh Education Center addendum. So in your packet, this stems from the presentation that we had at the last meeting with Brian Ritter, the executive director, and the city has an agreement that dates back to 2014, and it's a 20-year agreement, basically like a management agreement for some of the some parcels that are adjacent to Nahant. And you might recall during his presentation that he mentioned that there were a couple additional parcels that they would like kind of near and adjacent to Carp Lake, and that are city-owned. And there's so the idea here, after consulting with he and legal, would be to we've identified those five parcels in an addendum that would then be connected with, it'd be added to that 2014 agreement with the city council. So the city council would really be the signatory to it. We would be recommending the approval of the addendum to the city council. And so it's what I'm suggesting tonight, since this is a little new territory and it's not overly controversial, but I want everyone to feel comfortable with it, would be for us just to review, I wanted to talk about, take any questions, but you have in your packet both the addendum, the draft addendum, but also following that, the 2014 agreement with the city council. And I want, we want to take some time to also talk to the city council about this before it comes before them. And so tonight, no action here, but at the next meeting, we would seek to approve the addendum, and then we have 30 days. The clock kind of starts ticking when we take action that council needs to take action on. 30 days, which means 2 cycles for them to take action on our recommendation. And again, that would be the addendum, approving the addendum to the 2014 agreement. And so at this point, that you have what it looks like. It could be altered between now and May a little bit with some extra feedback, but I wanted you all to just see where we're heading. And at the May 25th commission meeting, we will seek your recommendation approval for the addendum.
I think they did a really helpful presentation the last time, sort of giving us a good overview, and obviously their stewardship has been really impressive down there. So that seems like a helpful thing. Do we have comments? Bill, are you?
To me, would make sense since this is gonna be 20 years, but the 20 years when Nahant started in 14. It seems to me like we ought to make this agreement merge with the other one.
Yes, and so that's a good point. It will, and so, and then in 13 years from now, it would be all connected into one conceivably, right? And then council and Nahant will, renew or whatever. I assume this will be a very long-term kind of relationship. It's a good thing all the way around. They want to kind of better manage their adjacent property, and we kind of need that too, because there's there's some stuff that that happens there that that we could use some extra eyes and everything from the neighborhood. So yeah.
Any other discussion, comments, suggestions that Steve maybe could take back? Okay.
So I'll be in touch and just look for that in the next meeting's packet.
Looks like River Heritage Park update is next. Is that Zach?
Okay, the weird echo, reverb echo through here. Hello, I guess Vice Chair Grubbs and members of the Riverfront Improvement Commission, Zach Peterson, Landscape Architect in Public Works. Periodically, Steve invites me over to just give some updates on projects going on. And right now, River Heritage Park Phase 3 is about to explode, I suppose, is the mild way of putting it, in Phase 3 of development. So give you a little background on that going on. Hopefully this remote works. It's kind of hidden. Well, I think it needs to be on one side. We don't want to disconnect the yours. Oh, come on now. Technical stuff. I may just go over there if that's all right. Yeah. Okay. What would it be as brings to the Riverfront Commission without technical?
Technical.
Oh, I got in trouble, I think very easy.
This is not flooding.
Okay. So hopefully we are going to advance to the next slide. Aha, yes. So for those of you, just kind of a refresher, here's the master plan for River Heritage Park. It's intended to be 20 to 30 year build out. Key elements basically narrate the story of why we're here. Key historic events that happened immediately off site, roughly within a quarter mile of the site. Narrates the unique history to our area and can be used in theory as a outdoor classroom for future generations to better understand how we came to be as Davenport, Iowa. So right now, the site, as you see it, this is a pretty fresh aerial. We've subscribed to a new aerial photo service called NearMap, and this is from October, so we're pretty current. The existing conditions, mainly the new entrance that was put in with the Canadian Pacific rail elevation, as well as the storage area where we've been stockpiling fill for future plans coming forth. So phase 3 itself, when I talk about phase 3, wait for this to catch up, is roughly, we're working on the upstream side, which is plus or minus 5 acres. So the area you see in red there will be the focus of what we're doing right now. So just in an illustrative view, what this phase entails is quite a remarkable amount of work, starting with the seawall repair and railing reset, roughly 930 lineal feet from roughly where the Riverwalk ends to the end of the property line up by the Hahn property. With that, extension of the Riverwalk, another 523 feet. The construction of the Great Lawn feature, so a noticeable open public area will be part of this. Staging for future phasing and anticipated to be the ramp up to the First Bridge project. Hopefully that'll coincide with more money coming in the door to make that a possibility. And with it, starting to form the land to get up to that. So part of it anticipates a limestone path kind of going up to a high point to correspond to future phasing there to give a kind of taste of what's to come in that area. Along with it, one of the bright sides with the Canadian Pacific track raise is they were amenable to our local utilities in terms of getting a boring cross-section underneath the tracks for the purpose of getting a water main to the site. So I'm really excited about that. We'll be tying in roughly the intersection of 3rd and River Drive. There's an existing main there. So coming up, we'll be able to bore a main through there and run it down roughly where the bike path is. And with it, future service access. So that's part of the upcoming phase, as well as electrical upgrades. So a lot of this new phase isn't necessarily tangible things, but they're essential things in terms of a utility pedestal to house all the future electrical needs for the project. So that's upcoming as well. So, oh, and also I failed to mention reconnecting the rotary gazebo electric. Right now, that the gazebo's been dark since we've actually installed the Riverwalk. It's been a case of almost finger pointing. Well, that wasn't my job. It's not my job. And so we're finally just going to say enough. Enough's enough. Let's connect it and get the lighting back up and running on there. So it's our responsibility now.
So Zach, do these, having those utility options there with the water main and things, is part of the ultimate plan to have restrooms available and things like that?
Correct. That opens the door for that. In fact, that's a really good point in terms of one of the original scope items of this phase was to have a restroom complex roughly, that water main is coming in right where the gazebo is now. It was roughly to have one of those flushable units there, similar to what we have further upstream. It's going to be cut in unless we come into a windfall of some kind, but it's not included. But we have several sites available for that. That is the ultimate goal, as well as in the master plan, an interactive play area, which is anticipated to be a historic map, so to speak, of the Rock Island Rapids, and an interactive map where kids will be able to play and understand, how the dam affected the initial rapids that were out front. So this opens the door for that, which is very exciting.
Great.
So initial scope coming up, removing, and this is the seawall repair item. So I don't know if you had a chance to go on site, but the wall is an absolute mess there, and this photo captures what we're dealing with. So we're going to actually remove and store the railing while the contractor comes in and saw cuts roughly 9 inches from the landward side of the wall out into the wall and basically reform it to where that'll be a clean edge. Like right now, this is where the Riverwalk's supposed to be extended, and it's just a liability right now in terms of having all these nooks and crannies for water to seep in underneath our brand new Riverwalk and wreak havoc later on. So by doing this, first and foremost, it's going to create a nice tight edge, sealed edge to where our Riverwalk can be constructed. So from there, we're working, it's a two-phased operation on the actual contracts up tomorrow at tomorrow's council meeting for approval. But one contract will be a wall contract, and then Crawford Company has been named the sole source provider because they fabricated it, they understand the system, and they'll be able to more or less curate the existing rail, get it in the right place. Because if you look at the existing core bore holes where we put that in, they're redos, they're oopsies. So by having Crawford on board as opposed to our last contract, we'll be able to actually form those, pre-form those, and be able to install the rail from there. And obviously reset the railing from there. Also part of it, the initial rail run that we had some adherence issues with the paint. As you can see in the drawing there, it's peeling off. It was a defective process, but Crawford's going to come in and sand it down and repaint to where we won't have that pretty unsightly appearance to the rail panel there. As far as utilities, I kind of mentioned earlier, and unless you have glasses, you certainly won't be able to see it from where you're sitting, but give a feel for where the, kind of mentioned it before, I don't know if my laser pointer is going to work, but, oh, you can kind of see it. So, okay, laser pointer, right here, the existing water is going to be bored underneath the tracks, roughly where the gazebo is, and then a water main is going to be run down here. Eventually, in future phases, be able to loop in, is a strategic goal of Iowa American Water to loop in further down or upstream by Oneida. So future phases will be able to run that water up there and give them a better service delivery as well. And from there, branching out 2 service lines to correspond with the upcoming boat docking coming up. So project timeline, as I sort of talked about a little bit, the seawall repair contract award will be tomorrow at the council meeting, as well as plans and specs for phase 3. So throughout the month of May, we'll get the bid on the streets and get the seawall repair construction underway. Leading up to June 2021, the water main will break ground roughly anticipated at the start of June, and it's supposed to be a 2-week process, so they should be relatively quick in and out of there. About the time phase 3 bid gets awarded. And so from there, probably full on with construction on phase 3 scheduled for about July. We'll hit that hard. Key note there that American Cruise Line's inaugural visit is scheduled for July 24th. So we initially hope to have all that open for them, but delays in permitting and that has prevented that from happening at this time. But we should be able to give them the gate that's currently there. They'll be able to use that. Maybe a little bit unsightly with construction going on, but it shouldn't impact that event. And
That's
then
all-
look,
Zach, that's also Vic's weekend, isn't it? July 24th? So maybe we can sort of like hide the unsightliness by virtue of the fact we have a great event going on.
that's
Today
true.
that
That's a
they're-
really good point. So write that down. But yeah, so if we can have a clean appearance there, maybe a break. It's not built into the contract, but maybe that's an addendum we want to pursue. So we'll look into that. And then substantial completion sometime in the fall, if not sooner, is what we're looking at. As far as the cruise lines coming in, this is roughly the orientation of where the 2 gates will be. The downstream end apparently will be initially used by American Cruise Lines, but then Viking will take over when they come online. And then American Cruise Lines will be upstream. So this is a pretty close representation of how big these boats really are. So, and we're talking like 400 lineal feet. So they will be massive when they're on site there and very noticeable as we move forward with that. But it'll be exciting nonetheless. As far as future entry upgrades, once again, in terms of getting enough of the infrastructure in, which was really important as part of this phase, we had to kind of back off some of these other ideas that we were shooting for. But one of which is the site plan for phase 3 is being prepped for entryway. And this is a little bit of an audible over the master plan in that master plan didn't account for cruise lines docking in here. So one of the asks from the cruise line is, a place for charter buses to come up and for departing traffic and that, for they go on their excursions. And this will better facilitate that in terms of, and I got to zoom here. So rough alignment there, your traffic pattern, buses will enter, and the site will be oriented to where there's a potential for at least 2 gates, if not 4. So buses will be able to maneuver through there, and you know, to where we could have American Cruise Lines and Viking Cruise Lines each have their own separate gate. Then passengers, after they get off the bus or get on the bus, will be able to just walk up to the Riverwalk to their respective gates. So there may be some wayfinding as part of this, as part of further negotiation with the cruise lines as we get underway with that. Also of note, one of the key components of the master plan is this monument for the Black Hawk Treaty, which was signed just off-site. This leaves a space for that as well. So thinking in terms of the future, that's where that would go. And if you actually go up on this area, this is actually a sight line right with the center swing span of the government bridge. So it'll provide a really cool backdrop to any kind of monumentation that happens in that area. So that in a nutshell is what's going on. It's right when Dee shows up and when Bill shows up. But that's a good opportunity though. So like questions, open up for questions and that kind of thing. So we can kind of go over for those that we're filling in right now, some of the site program.
So how far along is this at this point? I've been down there and I don't know, I don't recognize exactly like, it looks like that right now, right?
Right. So as far as construction timeline's concerned, City Council is to authorize the contract tomorrow for the seawall repair and reconditioning of the railing, the safety railing. And then plans and specs are also on there, so we'll be out to bid in the next month for the phase 3.
Oh,
And so just as a refresher, this is the scope of the seawall repair. So basically saw cutting out the innermost 9 inches, repouring to provide a suitable surface to have the Riverwalk butt up to it. And so the rails will be removed and reinstalled with that package.
and this is happening this year?
Yes, right now. Like it's set for construction as soon as we get the authorization to proceed. That's set June, July at this point. Let's
This
see.
is farther
Yeah, let me-
upstream.
Yeah, so that's what we're talking about, phase 3, the area in red there. It's roughly
Yeah.
the upstream 5 acres.
Okay.
So in an illustrative, and apologize for the size here, here's roughly the entire scope of the project. And I failed to mention, one of the bonus items we're trying to do is reseal the initial wave feature in the Riverwalk to where it gets a newer look to a new lease on life, so to speak, to jive more with the new area that's going in. So also we'll add a little traction to it because it's stamped concrete and it can be slippery in wet conditions.
Any other questions for Zach? It's exciting to see this start to happen. So,
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm glad that
exactly.
when you said, oh, they're going to let the contract, oh boy, when is that going to actually start? So it's great to see you're talking about like this summer. It's
Substantial
moving.
progress.
Yeah.
And just to fill in those, there's also the establishment of a water main and utility upgrades as part of this. So laying the foundation for future development, getting water to the site, which was a great negotiation that happened with the CP track rail. We were able to get a boring easement underneath. And a utility pedestal, similar, hopefully better looking than the one we have at Main Street Landing, but will be part of this as well to keep it high and dry, but also for all future needs, we'll be able to be serviced through this.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that update.
Thanks.
It's important. Next, we have the Riverfront refresh. And Steve, is that you?
Yep. Might just go from right here too. That's okay.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, just wanted to kind of give a little bit of an update. Had a very successful cleanup day on the 17th. We had, just wanted to give a little report, for 4 hours on that day. We had about 125, many of you were there, thank you, about 125 volunteers, probably an equal number of trash bags that were collected, not all totally filled to the rim, but I think that we were able to really clean up a lot of debris and do a lot of good work. We did some mulching, and we did some spray painting of some freight house patio furniture that was needed. Since then, we've been able to actually complete some more mulching, and there are, I think, one of the best things that really comes from that workday, there are two things. One is, I think this is an annual event. I think this is, I've already got it on the schedule next year, working with Extreme Cleanup for April 23rd. It's the way the calendar works because the weekend, this weekend for next year would be Easter weekend, and so I went, it's closer to Earth Day next, the 23rd anyway, so, but the second thing is a lot of, we saw a lot of, young people helping out, through the high schools and college and JCs and some businesses and city employees and, it just was very heartening to see all of that interest. And we want to continue to have that kind of pride and interest. And so to that end, we actually have a couple other days that I think we're going to see this year, some projects. For example, you've heard me talk about the Riverfront railing needing painted, and like the JCs that day actually stepped up and said, "Hey, we are actually in search of as a club, as a service organization, a project, not just a one-off, couple hour project, but we would like something that we could come back to for a few," and I'm like, I got it. I know exactly the project. We are looking for people that would come back multiple times. And so I have done a preliminary count of the sections, a little trivia time here. We've got about 230 sections from behind the band shell to what we call the amphitheater, just below the dam. 230, give or take, sections of railing. And we have, if you include in Centennial Park, from just under the Centennial Bridge downstream to and including the Marquette Street landing, the boat dock, generally, the number of sections number about 370. And so I think it's ambitious to think that is all in 1 year, but I think it's very doable to start in LeClaire and have a few work days, a few Saturday mornings with 10 to 15 volunteers and maybe more. We'll have fewer work days. That's fine. We'll see how it goes, and see where we are. And perhaps if we could do LeClaire this year and we could do Centennial Park next year, I'd be thrilled. And so I think we can handle the supplies, and we get the volunteers to do a very satisfying, highly visible project like that, I think, and they're very excited, and I'm thrilled. So those are some very fun spin-off effects of these sorts of things. So it was very fun to organize. Now, beyond that, we're still working very hard on, we're approaching the busy season. We're seeing a lot of returned events, outdoor events. Obviously, it's proving to be, exactly what we all envisioned and thought. We're going to see that happen. It's going to be a wild year, and that's exciting for our community. I think we need that. I think we'll be responsible with it, but I think our community on multiple levels needs that, and I think we're going to see it. In fact, in about 2 weeks, there's sort of a lead-off event that was scheduled to be inside. Pops was supposed to have an event, the symphony, at the Adler Theater, but is planning to be in LeClaire Park with a pretty cool Pops event. They're also going to be in there in August with their traditional Pops event, but we get a twofer this year. And so anyway, we're working on the normal summer concert series. You've probably read, or I've let you know about being able to bring Mercado here into the new Quinlan Court. We're going to, at least this year, have once a month, starting on June 12th, the second Saturday of each month, 5 to 9, in Quinlan Court and beyond. I don't want to have you think that it's just going to be in there. I think we're going to have such success that we're going to have basically the food vendors take up that area, but I think we're going to spill out and are planning to set up tables and chairs and that sort of thing into the Riverside Main Street landing, the former parking lot of the casino area, for lack of a better way to describe it. And there's adjacency there, and so that's, I think, a very nice thing. And so we're working out all the logistics of that, but that isn't where it stops. I mean, the vision here is to have the riverfront and many of these areas, programmed to the best extent possible. And so we're working on a number of things that aren't all ready to, be announced at this juncture. But I think this year, and then we've written a couple grants to help support that. If those come online, I think it'll be a little easier to produce some of these things. But one other thing that we're hoping to do is movies on the Mississippi, so free family-friendly event in LeClaire Park. So it'll happen once a month, once in June, July, and August on a Friday night in LeClaire Park. We'll use Parks has a big screen, and we'll have some food trucks. We'll basically set up and let people have their blankets and be able to socially distance as they need to, and be able to enjoy the riverfront location, as beautiful as it is, in a movie to boot. So and so that you can kind of get a feel for those kinds of things. I mean, I think you also can get a sense with the market, the Freight House Farmers Market opening this weekend. There's a wide variety of activities that they have planned. They also are there's a little bit of a expansion this year. I've worked with them on producing, and that is, you might recall that in the past, they've kind of been a little bit inside of the Freight House lot and a little bit with vendors inside of the, we'll call it the stadium lot, the Modern Woodman parking lot, with parking on kind of both ends. Well, it's a little cumbersome from a setup standpoint, and you get that, the flow of traffic, which is important. Sometimes there's this, I've always worried there's kind of the safety issue. Sometimes people park right in the middle of a flow that's supposed to be a driveway, even though you've got it barricaded appropriately. And so we worked together to come up with a little different scenario where essentially this year, all the vendors will be inside of the stadium parking lot. Freight House lot will be all vehicular parking, and it'll be entrance only into some additional parking into the stadium lot from Western, and exit only out Gaines. And so it's big enough right now for vendors, for them to expand, but we also don't want to waste any space. We could have just said all vendors, but then you see enough of an area that you don't want to say, if you can't fill it with vendors, you still want to try to have some parking, right? You don't want to, that's not the message you want to send either, right? And so it's not quite big enough to take up that entire lot, because that's a pretty large lot, but at the same time, you want to be able to safely have some parking offered too. And so we've come up with a way with this one-way system that kind of creates the parking in kind of that north-west quadrant, and with one-way traffic, we shouldn't have that stacking issue and sort of the vehicles and people. And anyway, we've gone over it many ways, and I think we've met with vendors about it. so we'll see on Saturday, but it's what's going to happen this year. You don't really change such a thing in Midway. So I'm hopeful that that will be well received. And actually, as we begin to move into that lot, some of this is a bit of a head game thing too, but people sometimes think that they are far away from a parking space, but you've just opened the door to so much more parking, even though it's always been there, but just across Gaines now, underneath the Centennial Bridge, is so much more parking. And I think people are going to realize that it's going to be very accessible off of Gaines as well as Marquette, and pretty close to the market. And so there's all this parking that sometimes people lose sight of available. It's always been there, but I think for some it just seems so far away. It will seem much closer, I think, in this new layout. So anyway, those are the kinds of things that we're working on, trying to make the experience better for people and more dynamic, programmatically. It's up in the game, and we'll continue to do that this year and in an ongoing way. So if there are any questions, happy to take them. Oh, I should mention, MacDown was supposed to have been last weekend. You might recall, I was very excited about this proposed event. About the time we were needing to get some commitments from prospective restaurateurs, was when there was that uptick about 6 weeks ago, 5-6 weeks ago. We had to make a decision at that point in the planning stages whether to kind of go forth or postpone. And what we've done is this is an event that's likely to take place, will take place in September, likely in late September now. So it will take place. There's actually some items that are dated for 2021. It has to take place. But it will, I think late September is looking like the best scenario at this point. So stay tuned to that.
Steve, can I ask a question on the farmer's market when you're talking about the parking? Do we do anything with sort of signage that makes people feel like those other areas are intended parking for the farmer's market? Is there perhaps some type of, movable signs that we could put out where people would get a sense of, oh, look, here's the list of vendors, and there's just information for them so that they would feel like that parking is very intentional for that use? And
not to that extent, but a good idea. I think we're getting there's a start to that this year with some more intentional signage. Yeah, I think that more of that is coming. Yes.
Would you have questions for Steve? Comments? Okay. I don't know. I would be happy to turn the meeting over to you. Okay. All right. And next we have our the staff report, chair report, I guess is the first thing on that.
Well, I would just, one more thing before that, not Riverfront refresh related. I would mention that there is a city council work session regarding the flood study, and I think Dee might talk a little bit about this as well, but I want to at least mention this meeting on Tuesday, May 11th at 3:45. There's a physical location it will take place physically at the community room at the police department, but I know there's a virtual link. It has not yet been established. I will, as soon as I have it, I will forward it to you, but I know that there will be one provided. But Tuesday, May 11th at 3:45 to 5 o'clock, it's a city council work session to discuss the flood study status, the update. So is that a segue for you, Dee?
Oh, you have me
Live.
on? Oh, thank you. Bill and I attended a meeting on the flood study. That's why we're late today. It ended at about 5:30, and it was feedback, and they have a very organized methodology to the feedback, which is very similar to if you looked at the stuff virtually online and you answered the questions, all we had was a guide taking us through it. So I'm suggesting that all the commission members go online and do that survey. I think it's very important. From a commission perspective, and, unfortunately, you have to listen to me as chair, that study is really focused on flood proofing, either the transportation system or the areas north of River Drive. So the authority of the commission, which is the area south of River Drive, is not really the focus of the survey, or if you look at the goals, really not in the goals per se. So they're not saying, well, if you're gonna have a playground, you should elevate it out of the water. They don't say, well, if you have a building there, you should flood-proof it. They don't really say, well, maybe you should raise all of the bike trail. None of that is part of this. This is really dealing with, I think the highest priority after the flooding was we couldn't get anywhere, we couldn't get to our businesses, we weren't even flooded, we couldn't get to our businesses. And the other area was we were flooded and we lost our businesses. And what can you do? Are there new ways to do this that is not as high risk as it seemed to be this time around, the last time around? So and I think that's very important because there are many people who believe that a flood wall is an option now. And we lived for 30, 40 years with that not being an option. This study at least allows our community to kind of take a look at that. And is it a big flood wall? Is it whatever? But it doesn't really, my interest as a commissioner and as a chair was like, what's the next steps after you pick some of these steps? I mean, if you have a strategy to raise an intersection or whatever, what is the city's strategy for the band shell? If it's always flooded, what is the city's strategy for active play areas? That's not included. I think those are things that we are going to have to continue to work on. Looking at our River West study, I think what we did was extremely appropriate. They talk about the Credit Island bridge as, well, you can't get to the island, why would you raise the bridge? Well, there's all these environmental issues that you might raise the bridge. So I think our study kind of addresses some of these things that this one will not. I was always under the impression, we should wait for the city's flood study and then kind of think where we want to go. But this is not going to be a guide to what we want to do with our work. If we want to find like individual protection for the businesses that we lease to above the dam, none of that's addressed. But as a commissioner and all of us who have a great interest in the river, I think it's important that if you have a go on, give your feedback. And they're collecting it and they'll be back fairly soon, actually, with kind of the next steps. So that's what I wanted to share.
Any questions for Dee? No. Anybody had a chance to go through that? I went to one of the sessions, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before now, but I also liked the way they had it set up with the areas to talk about, and then you could sort of focus your comments on what you thought was appropriate and of interest in trying to do in certain areas. Because that is one of the things about our riverfront. It's so vastly different what the concerns might be from one end to the other, that I think it's helpful to be able to break it down and say, okay, well, when you're talking about Area 4 down by Credit Island and that is a different conversation and not one that I think will be highly engaged in from this perspective. And I think that is more something that we as a commission are going to have a lot more influence on what do we think the city needs to be thinking of in terms of those things. So.
Right. I thought that too on South Concord. Our strategy for River West is like opening up vistas. You just talked about the Nahan adding more land. They end at Credit Island, so they don't address. The city's going to flood-proof the wastewater treatment plant, but they're not addressing anything downriver. So that's more done with zoning and those kinds of actions of the city, and those are areas I think that we should in the future engage in.
Bill?
Yeah, well, couple of the big things that I took away from the meeting we just came from was that they're really interested in the input of the public. And they want to know what the public really wants to protect. Are you really talking about the whole riverfront? How high do you want the protection to go? Is it 18 to 23? Do you want to go to 24? Do you want to go to 27? I mean, they're interested in the public of knowing exactly what they feel about those different levels of protection. And that survey, which is online, which we actually turned in right there if we hadn't done it before, but we did that survey and turned it in. But they're really interested in getting the public's opinion on just the level of protection that they want and what exactly is involved. I mean, we all hear, well, just build a wall, you know. Well, it's not that simple. I mean, it's a very complicated, complex flood mitigation project along our riverfront. And it's not a simple solution by no means. And so I think the public input is really important to them so that they know what the details are in the engineering and exactly what they're going to do to fulfill the public's opinion as to what they want to have for flood protection. So I think the survey is very important. So we need to encourage everyone we know to go online and do, in fact, the survey so that they get a large number of public opinions on exactly what this flood protection is in their mind. And then we go from there.
And I think that this is.
I have a question on that survey.
Go ahead.
How long is it open? Is there a closing date?
The link, yeah, there's a paper survey that is needs to be turned in by this Friday, but the online survey, I think it's 5 o'clock on Tuesday, the 4th of May.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then I would just say this is, I think, the second of 3 sort of official public check-in points. I don't know what they call them exactly, but this is like the second one and there's another one slated for probably the August, give or take August timetable, where there would be sort of conceivably another surveying and, you know, some public engagement as well after they've taken, you know, the first 2, all this feedback and generated some recommendations, strengthened them, you know, that sort of thing. And then that seems to be the strategy, right? And then they go back, get some feedback, you know, and then leading up to a fall timetable where council would be in receipt of a final recommendation.
Anybody else? Okay, are we ready for the parks report?
Is that my green light?
Tegan?
Okay, good.
Yep.
So speaking of surveys, my update is that part of the Parks Master Plan involves public input, and that survey is available through the end of April, I believe. And Steve, I can send you the link to that if anyone's interested.
Yeah, sure.
It's questions around likes, dislikes for specific parks. If you see, you know, your neighborhood park is missing an amenity or needs some attention, you'll have the opportunity to do that. There's some questions on preferences, like, you know, signage, playgrounds, benches, things of that nature, and the survey on how you personally use the park. So Steve, I will email you that link to pass on.
Great, and then I'll send that out tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I think that's it for the main part of our agenda. We have other business, public with business, 5 minutes.
Thanks for the opportunity. I want to talk about a couple things. I've got an old map here from I think it's the 1870s. I think it was referred to in the latest Downtown Davenport Partnership plan. It had a picture of this. So it shows a city in 1870, which I think many of us would say is it maybe has a lot of features that we would like to aspire to. It has a transit system. They had a horse-drawn rail system all the way to the west end from downtown. It went up to the fairground, which was, of course, Vanderveer Park at the time. The average person didn't have their own horse. They didn't you know, they had to walk, or they took the transit, and that's the way it was. We had a vibrant downtown. We didn't have a lot of people living downtown, but 4th Street was a pretty highly regarded area. Right now, we've still got some pretty good sized homes that at the time would have been very impressive. About the Riverfront Improvement Commission, you got to realize all the land that is in your purview, south of River Drive, virtually all of that land was filled. That was part of the Mississippi River at one time. At this time, it was. You looked at Front Street, what's now River Drive. That was the front of the river. The city cemetery that we drive by on River Drive, and you see the semi-trailer trailers across the street, and kind of some rundown manufacturing plants across from that cemetery. European countries, they wouldn't stand for that. They'd say, we've got to honor our ancestors. We can't have it like that. And why was that cemetery there? Have you ever wondered that? Well, it's because of Maple Island and Willow Island. Maple Island and Willow Islands had maples and willows. It was one of the most beautiful spots in our city. That's the reason they chose it for that cemetery. And people would go, that was a common occurrence 150 years ago. Everybody, you had 6 kids, and you got to figure 2 of them are going to die. They'll be in that cemetery, and you pick the most beautiful spot and place it. I think what we ought to do for our River West is kind of think about reestablishing a link to the river from that city cemetery. Get those trailers out of there, green it up. One of the first things you see when you're coming down toward the city is that city cemetery and those crappy trailers across from it. If we did anything, that's something I think we definitely need to do. And it ties into our Veterans Memorial right behind there. I think that would be a very powerful thing that really, I think the whole riverfront, I think we need to think about it not in terms of playgrounds or this or that attraction. You go to the riverfront in St. Louis, or you go to the National Mall. There are no playgrounds in the National Mall. There are no playgrounds at the St. Louis Arch. Everyone is welcome. There is no ghetto for little kids, but the kids get it, and they'll get it between the Centennial Bridge and the dam. A place for arts, a place for performance, a place to link the city of Rock Island, something that with our south-facing riverfront. That's the kind of thing that the kids will get it. Let's have it the Centennial Park for the kids, but not any place else. That's all I have. Thanks.
Okay. Do we have any other business?
Move to adjourn.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn in a second. Do we need to vote on that? I think we're adjourned. All right. Thank you.